All right. Thank y'all for your patience. Can y'all see y'all?
We can see you just fine.
We see you.
I see me? No, I don't want it to see me. I want it
Just turn it
Which
that
you
way.
That's okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have our panel here tonight. Thank y'all for joining. Sorry about the tardiness. We're having a little technical difficulties, but we made it. Thank you for our panel for being patient. So this week is Mental Health Awareness Week, which began on October the 6th through the 12th. And our topic that we're going to be talking about, and we want to this nationally talk about, is October is breast cancer, domestic violence, and ADHD awareness, as well as bullying prevention month. So we definitely think those topics need to be discussed, and our panelists here will help us discuss those issues. Thank you. So Mental Illness Awareness Week. This week and every week, Mask Off panel wants to spread awareness about mental and emotional health and start conversations and help end stigmas. So we ask everybody to share, tag, and comment if you know someone who needs this or searching for, maybe personally needed, or family members. So please invite them. Tell you a little bit about Mask Off Panel. Our purpose is to create awareness. We want to bridge gaps in the community, as well with other organizations and health and mental health advocates, and just make us all more aware. I think that's the whole thing. So maybe be the change. So our panel we have is Brittine Washington, the owner of B Exquisite Ties. So she does wonderful artwork and make wonderful, beautiful ties. She has one on tonight with breast cancer awareness. So I love that. We have Mr. Michael Chaney, which is community support specialist at Mind Above Matter. So I met him at Mental Health Connection of Tarrant County. Officer Kimberly Harris and Officer Trevor Chaney, thank you so much. They are the Mental Health and Community Advocates Commander. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, great. And then we have Ms. Angelique Dunbar, who's been with us again. So she is a domestic violence survivor as well as a breast cancer survivor twice. So we thank God for you being here because that's awesome. So the show tonight, we're just again bridging gaps, work together to build trust and make our communities aware and safer with law enforcement as well as other organizations and mental health advocates. The topics are breast cancer awareness, ADHD, domestic violence, bullying, and mental health illness. Millions of people in the U.S. are affected by mental health each year. So common factors that they all have, that all of these things we're talking about have, is anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, isolation, changing eating habits, high risk of illness, low self-esteem, and etc. So a lot of things that all of these illnesses have in common. As far as ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD, is a mental illness that affects the way you act and focus. I think I have adult ADHD. Me personally, my doctor doesn't think so. She thinks I have OCD. Well, I have been diagnosed with OCD and anxiety, but sometimes I think I have ADHD, which is common in adults. So I've found out that 1 in 5 individuals have ADHD, just not aware of it. So I recommend everybody go get checked out because it does exist. And it's good to know where you stand. So it's good to know where you at from a professional standpoint. Bullying is a serious threat in today's society with our youth. According to the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, bullying affects 20% of higher students, and also cyberbullying, which is another thing, especially with technology now. It affects 16% of high school students. And if you all have any statistics or information, please jump in there at any time. Domestic violence is individuals that experience domestic violence or abuse are significantly at higher risk of experiencing mental health conditions, so just post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, anxiety. So those are some things that are triggered by domestic violence. And of course, breast cancer, which is estimated that up to one-third of people treated for cancer in hospitals, breast cancer, have common mental health conditions. To rates is major depression disorder, that includes youth and adults. And so I think anytime you're going through anything medically, it does affect you psychologically. So we definitely wanted to stick with what's nationally known and recognized this month and raise awareness and so we think having Arlington PD, Ms. Brittine, which she personally experienced, she's an advocate. Mind Above Matter, they have been a great resource for Mask Off Panel. We reached out to you a few times, and also you have your own personal experience. And then just having a survivor here to say, hey, I've been through this, and this is what I went through. So I'm gonna let everyone introduce themselves. So we'll go around the room, tell a little bit about who you are, what you do, what professional and personal experience that you have with mental illness, and how your coping skills and what you do every day. So whoever wants to go first.
Okay, how about I kick this off? That's me, right. Hello, thank you so much. I appreciate everything that you're doing, trying to bring information to people. I think it's very vital, especially in today's times, to connect any way we can. My name is Kimberly Harris. I'm a lieutenant with the Arlington Police Department. Policing is my second career. Before I was in policing, I did crisis intervention therapy, and I actually still hold a license in professional counseling for the state of Texas. So my background is in counseling and in mental health. I had a gravitational pull to working with people with maybe some severe mental health issues. And during that work, I also got to pair up with police on certain calls in Denton County. And that looked like a job that I would enjoy. It was very crisis driven, very interactive. I felt like that I could do more than just sitting behind a desk or seeing someone for counseling. So I decided to look into Arlington Police Department and actually started working there in victim services and began to learn a lot about domestic violence and a lot about trauma and how trauma affects people. Not only physically, like you talked about, but emotionally, where they have a higher risk for things like depression and some critical illnesses. So, once I did that, I saw the other side of it with officers who would go out and actually talk to people in the street and talk with people in the home. And I decided that was probably a way for me to make a difference. So I went to the academy. During my time in the police department, I've kind of been everywhere. I've been in the traffic unit. I've been at the jail as a sergeant and as a lieutenant. I was recently in internal affairs. So,
That's experience.
I kind of moved all around the department. On a kind of a side note, kind of the side part, I would still focus on mental health, and I did a lot of education within the department on mental health issues, how to recognize, how to intervene, and how to maybe get some resources to people who needed it. Was able, and I'll talk a little bit later about the program that we have now at the police department, but it's a co-responder model where we pair a clinician in a police car with a patrol officer, and they go on calls. And so we'll get to that a little bit later, but that's kind of my pride of having to be involved in that in the police department, having the freedom to do that. Recently, our chief had petitioned to get a mental health specialty type unit in the police department, so we did get a grant, and with that I was moved to mental health and community advocacy. So I'm over victim services, crime prevention, and the mental health part. And one of that part right now is Officer Trevor Clenny. He came with the grant with the monies.
Okay.
So
and he got a good package right there.
So I'll let him give you a bit of his background as well.
Yeah, my name is Trevor Clenny. I've been with the department not quite as long as Lieutenant Harris, but we both moved over to the PD side in like 2002. My career took a way different path than hers. I was on patrol for a long time in the West District. I went to like what was called an E unit. It was basically like a street crimes-based unit. Worked there for a little while. Went in and worked in covert operations for a stint. And then when I came back, I just went back to patrol. And I got to work with my buddies, and I spent quite a bit of time there. And one day, a young lady walked into briefing, and they identified her as a therapist that worked for our local mental health authority, MHMR Tarrant, and asked if anybody, wanted to ride with her. I thought, no. time went on, the guy that did jump in the car with her, he was a friend of mine, and I started backing him on calls, and got blessed to be the officer that she rode with for a while. And so that's how that program started. Several years later, after doing follow-ups in the community for mental health needs, I just developed a passion for it. I wanted to keep doing it. I wanted more time to do it, and I wanted more time to spend with my folks. So I was blessed enough to get to do it full time. Yep, I very much appreciate that opportunity.
Thank you very much. I did. All right, next. Anybody? Sure.
I'm Michael Chaney. I do the community support work for Mind Above Matter. My team is outpatient counselors, therapists, and psychiatrists serving adolescents and adults, 3 physical sites in Burleson, Trevor, and Arlington, as well as some satellite school programs. The reason I got into that, though, the reason that I landed at Mind Above Matter, this was the role where everything in my life caught up to me. This is the role where my experiences, my dad had been a district attorney in Tarrant County for 20-something years, and when I was about 10 years old, he passed away from an autoimmune health condition. And that was the beginning of part of my journey. And at 15, one of my friends passed. Friends at school didn't understand that. There were some challenges that I experienced regarding that. I found myself in a very dark place at 16, 17. And what nobody knew is I had almost completed suicide 3 times. But thankfully, some warning signs were recognized. I was fighting with my mom a lot. My grades were dropping, and I was starting to have some run-ins with the law. I was having minor in possession, being in the wrong places at the wrong times when I shouldn't be, and hanging out with some of the wrong crowd that were dealing with their own sets of issues. It's really the reality. You know, we were all getting into stuff and trying to numb ourselves from the things that we didn't like, didn't find comfortable in our lives, but didn't have answers and coping skills on how to do it. So thankfully, those warning signs were enough that my family said, he needs something. So I spent 6 weeks in an intensive outpatient program that was 5 nights of the week with therapy, individuals therapy, and it brought out a resilient personality inside me that I am beyond thankful to have today. Because the journey of waves crashing on you in life didn't stop there. And so as I continued on, and at age 26, I got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes the hard way. I spent 4 days in ICU because my sugar levels were at 880. Coming out of that, I started having immense vision challenges, and I also was having issues with keeping food down. Turns out I have a paralyzed stomach thanks to the diabetes, gastroparesis, and avoiding fiber and all that fun stuff. And then I also went through 24 eye surgeries and over 100 injections in my eyes to keep me seeing. Part of the reason I say that, especially with regards to the connection of mental health and healthcare, is a couple of things. One, we have 3 main immune systems in our body, and the brain is one of those main factors of that. You have your lymphatic system, most people are aware of. We have our gut immune system and digestive health and all the wonderful stuff that it brings. But then you also have the brain is an important part, and it becomes really active in sleep. And you'll know that when you get sick or you're experiencing anything that's mental health and emotional draining, a lot of times tired and fatigue also can come on with some of that too. So some fascinating things there. But I think, that healthcare experience made me want to come into the healthcare field a little bit more. My set of experience having been through a program made me say, mental health seems like something I should get involved with. Part of that, I started a master's in education. I think that's important to lead into that because that was one of the things as I jumped into this field, I was able to connect back with my father's legal experience. I was able to connect with my mom being a school teacher for 20-something years and me starting a master's in education before failing vision and some other health challenges. Said, this is not the right time for that. It made me say, wait a second here. Mental health is super important, and it's found in every system, every corner, every aspect of who we are, what we do, and so when we say mental health, mental illness, it is also important to, I think, kind of define this a little bit. And so when I look at mental health, it's our ability to adapt to stress and challenge. symptoms so that providers and so that folks in maybe law enforcement or folks that may have involvement can help understand these symptoms and maybe how to better respond. But they're labels. And so when you look at mental health, it's our ability to adapt to stress and challenges and understand also that stress is an external stimulation, which can be positive, tolerable, or toxic depending on your ability to handle it.
Right.
That's things that I think are super important. But the healthcare journey involved in it all is something that really echoed a lot. I know that if I hadn't had the tools taught to me during the mental health program, I wouldn't have been able to embrace my healthcare journey with the stride, the fight, the willingness to go through the 24 eye surgeries and lots of injections, and it's been a really cool experience now that I'm 3 years with no procedures and my vision's gotten to a stable place. And to hear if I could have brought my retina specialist, that's one of the things that he has always shared with me and other folks in the office is my relationship with that. And so mental health with all the challenges, the healthcare challenges, and PTSD, ADHD, all of these things, finding a resilientness inside you to look at these challenges as opportunities for growth that can make you a stronger, better person. It's something that's not always super easy. It takes time to develop, and even if we've got some of those skills, we can get better at them, and if we don't feel like we have them, we can learn.
All right, we got two left.
I'm Angela Dunbar, and I'm a breast cancer and domestic violence survivor. And I agree with the mental health. I agree with everything you guys are saying, because going through those challenges, it does cause you to start having issues. And it's something you have to recognize within yourself, because you're dealing with already being embarrassed. From the domestic abuse part, you're embarrassed that it happened. How did it happen? What warning signs did I miss? And you don't tell people, so they don't know how to help you. And then when you don't tell them, but you run to them, you put them in danger, which is how y'all get involved. Because now they're blindsided, and you're taking your issues to them and not letting them know to be protected as well. And then from a cancer standpoint, it just breaks you down, and it takes away everything you thought you built your life for, and you have no control over it. And so it's something God's put on you that you have to fight through and choose to live through it.
And you have a survivors ball coming up,
Thank you.
and it's on the 29th.
The 19th, no, it's the 19th, next Saturday.
Next Saturday.
Survivorsball.com. And that's where we're honoring different types of survivors from domestic abuse, cancer, lupus, HIV, mothers against drunk driving, oh my gosh, so many things, human trafficking, sexual assault, just a lot of different things. But it's just basically showcasing one strength to live. Because we go through things, but we fail to celebrate and live through it. And so that's why we're doing that, because people have done some stuff that the average person can do. And they need to learn that it's okay to talk about it, it's okay to not be okay, but also to celebrate the fact that you live versus going back to the average day life and just forgetting what you're going through. Help someone else. My thing is reach back. A lot of people say they pay it forward, but it's easy to pay it forward when someone's already moving.
Right.
But you need to reach back and help someone who's afraid to move.
Yeah. That is so true.
Can you tell me how, is that something folks can get more involved in?
It is.
Where do they find more information? How do we get more information?
Survivorsball.com. And it's a nonprofit. It's a 501c3. And so, actually next Friday, in case anyone's in the area, I'm doing a PSA with this part of John Legend's event, the singer. And so we're looking for people who have survived gun violence, and we're doing a no more violence campaign. And it's love notes. So it's gonna be a nationwide video.
But we saw the first one you had last year. It was awesome. Like, I was tearing up. It was beautiful. I've been watching your Facebook page, little clips of different survivors, and it's just like you can just see them being so transparent, and you can see the pain still, and you can see the joy. You can see like them going through the emotions, like talking about it. People get teary-eyed, and then you see like, look where I am now. Like I made it through. Not a lot of people get to talk about that, so that's awesome. All right.
Are you ready now, Brittine?
Yeah, I think she's called me.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna look, come see my hands.
Right.
Well, my name is Brittine Washington, and people know me now as the Botox Slayer, but it's so much more than just that. A lot of people don't know the things that I've survived through growing up, because it's one thing, when you go to church, you learn how to be transparent, and you learn about God's grace, and you learn about His mercy and all of that, but still, it's still a mass in the service. I went to church for years, and I was so broken and in a bad place emotionally and mentally. First and foremost, I'm a sexual assault survivor. I was raped and molested for 8 years. And one thing about that is, a lot of people think when we were growing up, we were told if an adult touches you inappropriately or if a stranger does it, but they don't touch base on people that's your age. They don't talk about your family. So you, as a kid, you are expecting this person to drive up in an Astro van, the kidnapper van, and beat a monster. But how do you survive the monster that you're getting put in the environment of because your parents think you safe? Secondly, I'm a survivor of domestic violence. I grew up in a domestic violence household, and I always said growing up, that's not gonna be me. But it happened so fast. It happened so fast to the point that I was still laying there halfway alive, trying to figure out what just happened. Did that just happen to me? And in the African American community, you're told to what goes on in this house stays in this house, and that's kind of the mentality that you're conditioned to have for the rest of your life. So, it's especially being 28 years old, we don't get the opportunity to be transparent and real with our friends. We just call it, we're going to hang out, we're going to turn up for the night, but not even realizing that you're masking so many demons that you're really dealing with on a whole other personal and mental level. And you hear about PTSD, and you think about people that's been away in the military, that's been deployed, but it's never talked about as far as you survived being raped and molested for 8 years. That's a lot. Or you survived growing up and you losing friends to cancer, you losing your friends to street violence, you losing your friends to suicide, and it's still not addressed. It's still something that's swept up under the rug. A lot of people don't even know that I'm a 4-time survivor of suicide attempts at my own hand. And I never realized how bad it was until my triggers were being set off, but I was not educated on what a trigger was. And it was to the point where I was gonna take somebody's life. That it was a turning point for me to, okay, you're not okay. I spent 4 days in a behavioral health facility, and leading up to that, it's crazy because I come from a parent who is a counselor. And there's certain things that in counseling you can say and you can't say. So anytime you talk about harming yourself or someone else, by law they have to put you in a facility. And I remember the phone call that I had with my mom leading up to me being admitted was, don't go in there and tell them people anything. Don't go in there and tell, but I needed to. Because I'm still sitting at the table with my offenders at Thanksgiving dinners. I'm still at family reunions or family celebrations. Those are places that I was conditioned to wear a mask. I was in a bad place. And just spending those 4 days at the facility, it taught me a lot about how to identify triggers, how going to therapy is okay. Sometimes a lot of people don't realize whenever certain things bother certain people. Like me, I'm not a touchy-feely type of person, but in my work environment, they're offended by that. I feel like I shouldn't have to wear a badge like, oh, I'm a survivor, if you just respected my personal wishes. I think that a lot of the times people overstep boundaries, or a lot of people are uncomfortable with setting boundaries to make other people comfortable with who they are, but really, are you who you are if you're not really yourself? And this whole journey has been a blessing in disguise for me, because that turned into me being able to be an advocate for the Suicide Prevention Society and for the Tarrant County CASA's group, for young people who are in bad places that don't have the tools that they need to be able to convey what they're feeling or to be able to be heard. I was 9 years old whenever I came to my mom and said, hey, an adult touched me. It wasn't about the kids at that point, because I didn't think about the kids, because it wasn't talked about when I was a kid, but I knew when the adult did it, it was wrong. And for my own parent to say, well, just stay away from them, I learned how to suffer in silence while coping with marijuana or coping with drinking. I was drinking at 13. I was smoking at 9. At 9 years old, that's in the 4th grade. So for a long time, I kind of just said, okay, well, if your own mother is not going to protect you, who will? And so I just shut my mouth for a long time, and it started to show up in being misdiagnosed with anger management. I was bullied as a kid. So the anger management was a misfit for what I was really suffering through in my weekend life and my after school life, because one of my offenders picked me up from school. So these are why things need to be talked about and need to be addressed, especially in the Black community, because we are not, we are taught that we are superior to mental illness, but we're not. We just regular people. We every day, everybody has a story. So I encourage other people to just be okay with not being okay, so that you can be okay.
Love it. So I'm gonna go back to the Arlington PD. Ms. Kim, can you tell me what training do officers go through? Do you put officers through to how to identify with somebody that might be getting ready to commit suicide? I know y'all have mental health training, so just so people that are aware, because not every police force has this. I mean, Arlington PD is really good compared to the other officers out there. So you all teach me to know. So what type of training do police officers go through that? Is every officer required to go through this training, or you have to sign up for this training, and how can someone identify?
It's a big question. I think we have different levels of training.
Okay.
The first level that we have is everyone in the academy who comes through our police academy will go through 40 hours of crisis intervention training. And what we do is we talk about mental health, we talk about the legal implications of what officers can do, what they can't do. We give them some idea about going out on calls. We put them through scenarios where we have very realistic actors come in. Sometimes we have people from the community come in and talk. The second level of training that we offer is we will have, after they're an officer, they can take advanced courses. I will put out, or Trevor will put out trainings from agencies such as NAMI or some of the hospitals in this area. They'll do further trainings on mental health. And we also have officers who we certify as mental health peace officers. They go through an additional 40-hour mental health peace officer type training where we go more in depth into how to spot and how to recognize and how to intervene and how to actually talk to people and deal with things like maybe panic attacks, anxiety, trauma reactions. And then in Arlington, we're fortunate enough that we do have officers that are licensed counselors. So we actually have a top level, and those licensed counselors are very heavily involved in continuing the education and continuing the training.
I love that. I love that. Now I do see you all partner with one hospital's Millwood Hospital. I have noticed that, and I've actually been there to talk to some people. And Arlington PD was pulling up with some people, and you know they wasn't like in handcuffs, like hey here they are. It was more of hey I'm releasing this person, you're here. Let's make sure they okay. You okay? It was you could tell the passion they had behind it. It wasn't just hey we have another person that is going through suicide, getting ready to commit suicide. We stopped them, dropped them off. You deal with them. It was like a follow up. So you can see the relationship that Millwood Hospital has with the Arlington PD. So that's just what I personally saw. It made me want to reach out to you all and meeting you all at the Mental Health Connection of Tarrant County. When I met Mr. Michael, he was just full of joy. He had a wonderful hat on, and couldn't miss him. He's the only guy I never even had. And by talking with him, he definitely pumped you all up, saying, hey, Arlington PD was a good resource. They really take mental health serious. They want to educate the community, let the community know we want to help each other. So that's what I think was very important. If somebody is dealing with like a domestic dispute, when is the right time to call the police? A lot of people have asked me that, and I'm like, I don't know when's the right time to call. Like, you know, after the first hit, I don't know. You know, so
As soon as you can get to the phone.
And I'm going to defer this one over to Trevor. You know, he has more recent patrol and more extensive experience on patrol and has a unique take on this topic.
I kind of specialize in mental health now, but I spent, of my 17 and a half years with the PD, I spent 15 in patrol. And during that time, I assisted in a program, kind of like how I got started in mental health, where I did follow-ups with folks that had a mental health component to their calls for service. Well, I would go out again with a licensed therapist and another officer, and we would go and we would do follow-ups for victims of domestic violence, making sure that they had what they needed, that they had appropriate safety planning, that they were staying in contact with the district attorneys and with the detectives, and that they were safe, that their emergency protective orders were in place, or that if they needed additional help. Now, as far as when they need to call, the very minute that you feel like your safety is in jeopardy, call. It doesn't have to be after the first hit. It most certainly doesn't. Yeah, before the hit. I mean, we don't have to take enforcement action. Every time that we would much rather not go to a call and take enforcement action. There's a lot of times that we can serve as the mechanism for de-escalation, where we can go to your home and we can resolve it before things get better. We don't have the power to make, it's a common misconception that we can make people leave. The only vehicle that allows us to make people leave is arrest. We would very much like to avoid that. If we can, but if we, people are people, we're people, the people that call us are people, we have people problems, right? We have family problems, life problems. We might be going through an illness or stress at work or stress with one of our kids or our parents. We can assist in that. Now, I'm not a counselor, and I don't pretend to be, but I've led some great parts of my life, and I've had some terrible parts of my life, and maybe I can help you through your terrible parts. But a lot of times we can, appeal to reason, because nobody wants to go to jail for hitting the person that they love, and it's very hard to fix that after it occurs. So don't wait until after. Call us before.
I have a question about the protective order.
Okay, I'll do my best.
Well, you may or may not know, but are they really effective? Because I know when I was going through this was back in the early 90s, they're not that effective. It wasn't at that time. And the reason being, everyone had to have a sheet of paper. I think at the time you can be more than 100, they couldn't come more than 100 yards from you, but it didn't stop anything.
Okay, so you're right. A piece of paper is not going to stop something. What it does is it provides a stopgap for victims sometimes, where there is a legal order in place from a judge that's criminally enforceable, which is a little bit different than like a restraining order, which is not necessarily criminally enforceable, that comes from the civil court, but an emergency protective order in the state of Texas is a shall arrest offense. So if somebody violates one and a police officer is there, an arrest must be made. So that provides a little bit of latitude in keeping people safe. Now, if somebody shows up and you're on the phone with 911 and something happens before I get there, you're right. That piece of paper was not very effective. But if I get there and he's still knocking on the door, or he's sitting in the car, or whatever the case may be, and that behavior is in violation of the protective order, then that can solve that problem. So, but it doesn't have to just be a protective order. There's a lot of other things. So the same types of things that we do with people in the community that have like a mental health crisis, or we do safety planning, we do with survivors of domestic violence too. So just like we would take somebody that had a high suicidality, and we would try to fix the things that would maybe contribute to that, same with domestic violence victims. So we try to meet you where you're at and fix those issues.
Do you go outside of Arlington or Chaney County?
No, but I know people that do.
Well, will they have the same resources that you have, or the same knowledge?
I think most different officers kind of specialize in different things. So you could absolutely have somebody sitting in this chair that knew way more about domestic violence than I do. The guy that I was partnered with for many years kind of specialized in that. I know the guys that I went to the academy now work in domestic crimes. There will always be different tiers of knowledge, kind of like we have in mental health, because you have people that's their interest.
Right.
And but yeah, for the most part, the law is the law, and they know when every officer in the state of Texas should know when an arrest is required and when one isn't required. So
I like that. Definitely like that. That's good. Now, Mr. Mike, go to you. Mind above matter.
Sure.
You all have resources. I love the fact, and I called you last week because we had someone reach out to us that had an adult with autism, and they just didn't know how to handle him. You were able to get us some resources. Now, tell us a little bit about Mind Above Matter, what you all do, the intake process. Just kind of walk us through a little bit of that for me.
Sure, yeah. So when somebody reaches out to us or is referred to us for services, first folks will talk to somebody from our call center and call team who will get them set up for their scheduled assessment. We can take requests for same-day assessments. My team's about 8 out of 10 for being able to make a same-day assessment happen. Our goal is to try and prevent inpatient as much as possible, and also provide some good continuity in the outpatient setting. So everything we do, everybody goes home each night. We work with ages 12 and up, adolescents and adults. We do work with some 11-year-olds at some of our school-based sites where we actually have some partnerships with middle schools. So that makes a lot of sense, but really for the comfort level of our psychiatry team and some of the nature of what we work with, we tend to stick to 12 and up. Child psychiatrist in the state of Texas working with insurance and quality is sometimes challenged to find. So the resources can be limited, and certain related symptoms, conditions, and or insurances may have harder times than others. We do work with most insurance, commercial as well as Medicaid. We have the 3 physical locations that serve adolescents and adults, and then we also have satellite school programs, and currently operating in 4, and we are getting ready to move into our 5th school district. And that's where one of those things that I'm beyond proud about and very excited about, and can relate to my own sense of experience. One of the things that I felt was allowed my program that I got to go through to be so impactful for me was this daily opportunity to take the skills, the coping, the processing, how I was learning, because these were things I did not have language for. I wasn't developing healthy coping strategies. My brain was working on protecting myself and helping me feel better, but it wasn't picking healthy coping strategies that were going to provide long-term better. Being able to daily work with a couple of professional counselors, and then take it back into the environment where I needed it the most, into my community, into my home, into into my school and then come back that night. There was such a thing that allowed it to me to retain the knowledge and actually put it into practice and make it part of my daily. And so, you know, when I joined with this team and we looked into and started talking to schools, I knew that was the next evolution, the best opportunity. These are places where our youth spend a significant period of their time. Sometimes they spend more time with their school family than they do with their own family. So the more that we can get these opportunities to integrate these programs in folks' communities so that they can come in daily, get the skills they're needing, put them into practice, and then come back and say, okay, this went well, this didn't go well, I need some other help here. This one's not working for me at all. Is there something else? Those are some things that really help influence substantial long-term change. When we look at taking a bad habit or a negative habit and turning it into a good, the science would say it takes a minimum of 30, 40 to 60 repetitive, consistent, positive-based experiences to adjust that habit. Sometimes more. But to convert a positive habit into a negative, it may only take one experience because our brain's protective and factored in. So the defense parts that come out to deal with the challenging stuff that we face, it alters our brain. It alters the way our brain connects experiences. Most of us can relate. If you're in a room or a classroom or something, somebody drops a book behind you and you hear that thud, you can feel that energy flow through your whole body. But then you turn around and say, oh, somebody dropped a book, I'm safe. And then your release is over. But you can feel that tension. So the thing is that our brain, being that protective organ, is constantly analyzing our world around us, comparing it to past experiences, not consciously. That's not like, let me think about every experience that makes sense to relate to this one right now. Okay, now how should I react? This is milliseconds. This is instantaneous reactions. And so when you start to break some of that down and learn some of the better ways to navigate how to, there's certain things in the world you can't control externally, but the thing that you can work to control is some of the things within yourself. It isn't always easy. We're not always exposed to the tools. In fact, most of us are not. And we rely on folks that also may not have ever been exposed or taught these tools to teach them to us. And that's not fair. It's not fair for anyone. And we need to not place blame on those kinds of things. But we also need to have some self-awareness. We need to be able to be vulnerable to share our challenges. And find safe places to do so. I've heard there was a Dr. Kenneth Ginsburg describes that a lot of folks tend to put our baggage, our heavy stuff, and things that weigh us down into leaded boxes. And the thing about a leaded box is it's dangerous, it's poisonous. Lead is poisonous to our body. X-rays can't see through lead, so you don't know what's in there. And in fact, Superman can't see through lead. So when you think about that, it can be very and if we're putting our stuff in a leaded box, lead also, heavy metal, weighs us down. It's also though a metal that you can it's moldable. It's not a strong metal. So if you're putting a bunch of stuff in there, that box can crack open or can leak or can explode. What we should strive for is Tupperware containers. And if we can put our stuff in our brain into a clear Tupperware container with individual compartments, so we can see what's in there. The lid's on there though, so it doesn't stink. But you can tell when you put stuff in a Tupperware container, like when too much is going on or when that stuff starts to off-gas, the things that we put in there will off-gas. You'll notice that the lid on that Tupperware container will get a bubble. But you can see that, you know that, and so then it's time for you to take your Tupperware to a safe place and burn your box.
Love it.
So that's, I think, we try to be a safe place for people to burn their box, for folks to get the services they need.
I love that.
Anything from once a month to a 5-day-a-week program.
That is awesome. I love that. Now, Brittany, you're an advocate, so you do stuff with suicide Right, and I know that because of your personal experience, and I think all of us here were just relatable. You know, we've used our own personal experience and want to reach back and help someone else. And with you being a domestic violence survivor as well as being breast cancer twice, I know that with the Survivor's Ball, you're being able to expose other survivors. So I think that's awesome. But I think the one thing that I've heard consistent is learning the trigger, like learning what triggers us, and helping other people identify what's your trigger. And I think you are right, Michael, just starting with yourself. Like me going through learning that I have anxiety and OCD, and then learning what trigger those things and what coping skills, because what works for me might not work for you. You can have the same exact thing that I have, but we cope differently. Mm-hmm. Mine might be yoga, exercising, eating. You know, there might be things that are coping skills for me, but it might be somebody else might not eat, or they might not want to become tired, fatigued, what have you. So I think, you know, just learning what works best for you, and as you become, you know, as you get older and more wisdom, you understand what works for you. Not everybody identifies with that. It is okay to go to see a counselor. I had to go see a grievance counselor after the passing of my aunt from breast cancer. I had to go see a counselor for myself because you start realizing, hey, when you want to be violent towards someone else, I never want to be violent to myself. Like I love myself very much so, but I always wanted to take it out on somebody else. And when you come to that level, then you know, okay, you can't do that in society. You can't go around hitting people or slapping people. It's just not gonna work. You know, the police is gonna be called. I don't need a police. I mean, you know, and drinking. You know, that's not. You know, putting poison into our body, drugs, and I think everybody just learning. Hey, these are the things that trigger me. And if you don't know, if you need help, it's okay to go see. Just go see. I would rather, if you feel sick, you're going to go to the doctor most times, 9 times out of 10. You don't know what you have. It might be a respiratory infection, might be a cold, you might just have allergies, but you don't know until you go and get checked. And so I think just educating people, because a lot of people just don't know what you don't know. We can't use that as a wall and say, hey, I didn't know that, and that kind of become an excuse. Mm-hmm. You have to keep pushing. You know, and just taking off our mask here at this panel discussion and being transparent with other individuals, it's going to help someone else that's watching, because we have a lot of people watching. Thank y'all watching, but we have a lot of people that are watching and that, you know, maybe realize as a parent, hey, my child is going through, they're acting this way, so, you know, educating that it might not be an adult that's molesting you, it might be another child, but everything starts in a home. The foundation is everything, and having those safe zones, and I think that is important to have at home. With my son, I let him know this is safe. You can come and talk to me. And I think as parents, we just have to, you know, take off our mask and let our kids know we've experienced some of these things and it's okay. But we try to be super mom or super dad, and we protect our children, but sometimes it hurts them because they never knew that they experienced that until you go through like, oh, well, I experienced that. Like, Mom, you never told me. Maybe you could have saved your child if you would have told them that you experienced that, and by you beating cancer twice, you know, just once. Sorry.
Yeah. I don't know, but I'm like, Lord, don't let that
cancer, that is very, very hard. I watch, I know we talked about it, and I haven't talked about it on the show before, but watching my aunt go through chemo, radiation, and just what it does to you physically, mentally, emotionally, I don't think anybody can be ready for that. No, people just in the household with you, yourself, it just takes over. It takes people to a dark place. And by me just being around it, it took me to a dark place. And so, and when you're sometime in a dark hole, you don't know how to get out. You're reaching this piece, but here is somebody who is, and that can help you. I think that's very good to know, because a lot of people don't know that, you know.
Well, and it's important to know that the goal of that program is to divert people out of the criminal justice system that have a medical health condition. Mm-hmm. You know, we talk a lot about coping, and we've spoken a lot about positive coping and some negative coping. Well, when your inability to cope leads you into committing certain crimes, how do we need to address that?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, and it's not that the criminal justice system can't address that at times. Sometimes they're the only thing that can address that. Sometimes there is no other avenue. But for some people, they need to be diverted out of that system. They need to be diverted into a system of treatment and I don't know, a way to become stable and compliance with medication, and that's what our program does. So those licensed clinicians that we have that are from MHMR Tarrant, that's what they specialize in, and we just provide them the pathway to do that.
Right, I love it. And there's so many resources. Until I joined the Mental Health Connection of Tarrant County, I was shocked about how many resources in the schools and other organizations in the police department. You're like, oh my goodness, you just don't know what you don't know. But I was blown away when I first went. I'm like, this room is full of resources. There's no way why people are suffering. We just don't know the resources are there.
It's too difficult to navigate. So, and that's one of Lieutenant Harris recently participated in a Bloomberg Harvard initiative. And I think that was one of the things that you guys identified, right? Is that there's just so many programs that it's hard to know.
Yeah, there's a lot of gaps in resources, and then there's just not a lot of unknowns. People don't know where to start. Where do you begin? And you talked about being in a spot where you felt in that dark place, or you felt like you couldn't tell anyone. Who do you talk to? Who do you tell? So I think what we're finding is first responders nationally, 1 in 10 calls to police involve some type of a mental health crisis. So, we're seeing that more and more, and, rather than, look at police as just enforcement, I think that the profession is turning a little bit more to the side of the, not just protect, but protect and serve. Right. And the and serve is what we're looking at strengthening with the department. So you may have some people that don't feel comfortable talking about it to anyone, but they do feel comfortable talking about it with maybe an officer. So, but the gap in resources, the unknown, who do I call, where do I go? You think about that, but then you think about someone who's having cognitive impairment, where they're not able to think, where their thoughts are just going 100 miles an hour. And how do we get to that point where we're able to bring everyone together and maybe establish a resource bank? And that might be something for future. You're doing a lot of work in that, right?
Yes, I think that with all of the different organizations, I think that what we fail at is people care more about their name of their organization or them being first, and not putting it as if it's as it should be a selfless act of just compassion. If that's something that you're passionate about, it shouldn't matter if your organization get the credit for that event. It's about the people that receive help and the resources that they need. That should be the main focus. Right. But as far as like with the schools, I think that that's a great idea. I see that a lot of schools now are, instead of throwing kids into detention, they're starting to implement yoga instead, or meditation. I think that that's really good. I think that the misconception about therapy, people think that you have to be absolutely out your mind to go to therapy. A therapist is a good resource, or I'll explain it like this. It's your mind, especially like me, I also have anxiety. Very bad. So when my thoughts are racing, my what it looked like is a ball of yarn, and it's just like all over the place. And what a therapist does is help you prioritize and put your things in a plastic container, so you can see, okay, well, this area needs some work. This is a priority right now. This is not. I still have this going on, but however, if this is causing so much of the yarn to be all over the place, this is something that I need to tackle first. I think we as like business owners, police officers, you have your organization. it's so much that go on in our everyday lives that we literally we should triage like the hospital does of what's important and what's really not. The things that we spend a lot of time on and the things that are so unimportant.
That's true.
Well, it's kind of like Angela was saying with domestic violence. When should you call?
When should you call?
Before the emergency,
Yeah,
right?
before the emergency.
So,
We don't get mental health checkups. We probably go and get, we get our blood drawn. Hey, your cholesterol's a little bit high. Hey, Trevor, you need to watch your blood pressure. You need to run a little bit more or something. But we don't go for mental health checkups.
Yeah.
I guarantee you, your therapist.
everybody needs a therapist, and we all need a checkup from the neck up. Use that checkup there. I'll throw that in there.
Get your checkup.
And I take this up. So one of the things I became conscious at the beginning, I defined mental health, and I was very conscious to do that. And the reason I said that is because after being in the field, talking about in community service and community support, talking about mental health for 5 years, it was about 3 years into my journey, and I thought to myself, what's my definition of mental health? And then I started asking some of the mental health professionals and just folks I was coming across, doctors' offices, you name it, what was their definition of mental health? And I realized that a lot of folks' mental model goes immediately to mental illness. That's immediately where that piece goes. But the fact is when you look at mental health as our ability to adapt to stress and challenges, we all have to adapt to stress and challenges. And there's stress and challenges that all of us adapt well to.
Right.
And there's stress and challenges that each one of us may not have a strong set of skills to deal with it.
Right.
And so when we don't have the right tools to deal with the stress and the challenges, you have challenging behaviors that come to the surface. These challenging behaviors can be external towards others, or they can be internal towards ourselves. But those are some really key identifying factors. And I think when you look at that, you can have a momentary outburst where the stress hit a peak point. You snap for a second, and not even in a bad way necessarily, just you get a heightened emotion, you're reacting a little bit negative, it's not super positive, and then you kind of, things settle down, you reach your back in, and you can move on about your day. That's tolerable stress. It didn't do any lasting damage, but it didn't also do the good things for you either, and help you stay in tune with that as being a positive experience that you want to repeat. So. But at the same time, though, when those experiences become toxic, when they cause danger, dysfunction, or discomfort, those are real clear warning signs that a regular mental health appointment should be very beneficial, and get an assessment, get in there. But like I said, I think everybody should have a therapist. We all are dealing with stress and challenges, and there are times when no matter how well we can handle stress and challenges, certain things may be too much, or there may be certain areas. We maybe have all these great tools and can handle all this stress and challenge in this one area of our life. But this one area over here, maybe our skills aren't so good, or maybe life has buried the skills that we have, because sometimes we have them, but just life piles up and weighs and buries them down.
Yeah, and it's kind of, so one of the big questions here tonight has been, well, are all officers trained on this? What do you do to train your officers to do this? Because you don't want an officer to come to your emergency that's not trained, right? And we want our officers trained in everything. And then, because I've got thousands of hours of training, right? I mean, you pull up a training record, it's like, wow.
It's scrolling.
So, and I think we do a pretty good job. I think we do a phenomenal job. And our officers are getting probably more education and more training than they've ever gotten. But that's what we want for y'all too. We want, and not
it's a full circle. It's a give and take type of situation. I find it unfair that people put so much of a heavy weight on you guys' shoulders, but at the same time, like you get examples of calls all the time where people say, well, the police officers should have handled the situation better, but they never take the time to think about, well, what if this person was actually in active counseling? Could they have not been
developing the tools and training for themselves
to be able to be a well-functioning individual, to be able to identify, okay, well, maybe I need to take a step back. Maybe today is not the day that I need to be so active with people. Maybe I need to take today to paint art. Maybe I need to take myself to the movies. Maybe I need to be able to journal today. Maybe yes,
Right.
it's okay. I think that people need to learn to give themselves permission to say, okay, today is not the day that I can be that person for you. A lot of the times for me, I am the counselor for my friends to talk to. But however, when I start to identify that today I feel like I'm a little bit unbalanced, so I can't really carry your stuff and my stuff too, I have to learn how to put myself first, and that's okay because we're taught to put other people first. But it's okay to be a little selfish sometimes.
Self-care. I've had to do some workshops recently on that, and almost in every workshop I've done on self-care, when I ask what does self-care mean, there is somebody in that audience that says to be selfish. And we have such a perception of self-care being selfish. But the reality is we can't care for anybody else if we don't care for ourselves.
Absolutely.
Right.
And you have to put that energy into that. You have to. Because it will drain you.
It
You know,
will.
if you think of your life like a cell phone battery, let's
Right.
hope that we start our day off at 100%,
Right.
right? But, you know, as you go through
Right.
the different...
Sometimes it get out the charger, so we
Start off at like 40.
Right.
That is
Where you're
true.
going.
And that's
a
what we
great,
had
that's
to
a great
do.
analogy, right?
I'm sorry. That's what we had to do with Mask Off Panel. We took 2 months off from doing shows because it became draining. You know, we can't help anyone else if we're not helping ourselves. And that's what I had to tell my team. We love what we do. We love the feedback. But if we're not in a good place mentally and emotionally, how are we going to be in a good place for somebody else?
Can't
I mean,
recharge.
when we're looking at like, I really don't want to do this, but I got to do this. People can see it all over our face. We're not as giddy up and happy as we was, 11 months ago. You know, so I'm like, hey, y'all, it's okay to take the time and say, I need to recharge my battery. And I tell my friends that too. Sometimes I have to recharge my battery. I love hanging out with my friends. I love being bubbly, but sometimes I have to take time for me, and take self-care. So I definitely appreciate all of you for being part of this panel discussion and being a resource for our community and help bridging those gaps, because we're educating our viewers and people go back and watch and they can see, okay, well, I didn't understand what Arlington PD does. Now I understand that they are properly trained. They're not only here to just protect, but to serve as well. So like you said, people get that misconstrued a lot. Just think you're just there just to put the hammer down. No, you're humans. You're here to actually be relatable to somebody and say, hey, I understand, but unfortunately I have a job to do, but here's some other resources. Or when I call Mind Above Matter, call Mike and say, hey, I have a situation, or this person called me and said this, you say, we might not do it, but here's some other resources. So I love the fact that if you can't do it, you have other resources. If I call and say, hey, I have someone that might be assistance or need assistance, you can say, hey, I can't do it, but let me find someone who can, and vice versa. I love that about us, is you're full of resources. So if you want to take a few moments, we're wrapping it up, just to let people know how to contact you, your organization, website, and how to find you, any last minute resources you want to give us, please do before we wrap up. Whoever wants to start?
I'll start, so we can go this way.
Yeah.
You can find me at angeliadunbar.com. You can make an appointment if you need any type of mentorship, dealing with survivorship, entrepreneurship, and just everyday life.
And the Survivor's Ball
And
again.
Survivor's Ball is Saturday, October 19th. Thanks for that.
Yes.
It's next Saturday, so come out, celebrate with other people going through life-altering, changing occurrences.
Love it.
Well, at Mind Above Matter, our team can be reached at 817-447-3001. You can also look us up online at www.mindabovematter.com. And we can provide some help. I did want to, I have a few seconds to, and if you want me to come back to this, I wanted to read this brief poem with a description afterwards, so I think would really speak to this.
Yeah, can you finish with that? Because that would be awesome.
I'll let
Yes.
you, yeah, you got it.
We're real easy to find.
911.
But if you need something different,
Actually.
we have something different.
No.
So,
We are at the police department in Arlington. Kim Harris, Trevor, Clenny, they all know us there, right? But I do want to go ahead and put this up for people. This is the eye care line. Okay. A lot of times, people just need one number, and this is the number.
Yep.
They now accept texts, so you can text the line for those individuals that are maybe more of the millennial generation and are used to texting more than talking. Okay.
That's your
So-
crisis line, that's how you get resources, that's everything. Linking in, getting registered.
All right, we got it on there. We will make sure we put that in our news feed as well. So we
Okay,
can-
I'll leave this to you.
Yes, please do.
Let me read that for you.
Brittany?
For me, you may contact me. A lot of people are on Instagram, bowtie_slayer, or BrittanyWashington@gmail.com if you would like to find out some more information. Oh, thank you.
Show us how you're one of your bow ties. Is that the
Also-
one you have on?
Yes, I also created this design earlier today. But actually, this one I'm gonna give to this officer.
Yeah, you can't have that one not bought down. Yeah.
That's already taken.
So, but if you guys need any further information on Tarrant County CASA's group or the American Suicide Prevention Society, please contact me. Don't be ashamed. Don't be afraid. I don't bite. I'm real down to earth.
I love it. I love it. Go ahead and read your point and close us out.
All right, so you're going to have the first two verses are kind of based on a little bit of the story of mine, but the third verse is really what I think I want to home in on, and this is going to be a reversed message for everyone else. So, where was I stuck in between, a dead silent eye who was watching me? He left behind a legacy for me to follow into a dream, showed me what life is worth, gave me a wish, gave me birth, gave me love, followed in sorrow. Against all odds, it made me grow. Slowly floated miles away. I drifted lonely every day. I lost touch in what's to be until it all came back to me. I was blind in my own eyes, losing touch with life's good times. I was caught up in the wrong crowd and was lost when I found. I was guilty of assuming I was right to fight those fights until I opened my eyes and stretched for the light. As the warmth came back, I began to know, against all odds, it made me grow. So where are you, stuck in between all of your hopes, all of your dreams? Sometimes they'll break down at the seams. But pick up the pieces to see what it means. They may not fit exactly the same, and only you will know where they came. Stitch them together with the tools you know, and against all odds, you can grow. You see, we all face challenges, and when we have the right tools, we can think through the challenges in a positive, productive way. This helps lead experiences that shape positive life outcomes. It's not always that easy. Sometimes we may not have the right tools, or our brains might get buried by life, making those tools we have less effective. Do not place blame. The connection between our brain, body, and behavior systems go into protection mode. Unfortunately, those behaviors that come to the surface may be harmful in the long term. These challenging behaviors can be directed outwards towards others or inwards towards the self, and sometimes these behaviors can cause lasting damage. The change in our protective response, and they can also change our protective response for other experiences in life. Maybe I should have gotten my reading glasses out. But our behaviors and our symptoms and our ability to handle stress that we are experiencing, we can learn to adjust our perspective of these fears and our negativity that we find better outcomes. If you need better tools or more support, ask for help. It is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of courage. And remember that our perspective drives our actions to create our life. So the more we can help inspire some positive thoughts, that can help lead to positive actions, that can help create a positive life.
Love it. Yay. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Mask Off Panel followers. Please keep us in mind. We appreciate everyone for your likes, your comments. We see them. Sorry I didn't respond to you, everyone. But we will go back and respond to your questions and your concerns. And just remember that you have to start with yourself before you can help anyone else. And it's okay. We're not okay. I'm not okay, and I'm not ashamed of it. But that's okay. I'm doing the things that help me get the right coping skills and to be aware of what's going on. So we love you very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a good night.